Hello everyone, and welcome back. This is going to be part 3 of our KSP career mode, I guess tutorial, stream, whatever you want to call it. Um, and yeah, we're going to pick up where we left off last time. So last time we had managed to do a flyby of the moon, then we had gotten to orbit, picked up a bunch of different temperature scans from orbit. That was the mission that we finished off with. And we came back to Kerbal successfully, and with all that, we can see we have a ton of science, 419 science, and we have 500,000 funds, and that's going to give us tons to be able to do more now. So the hope is that the game is now going to give us a mission to actually land on the moon, and I'll take you through how to do that, at least the best way that I know how, so that hopefully, you know, when you're doing this yourselves, you'll have a chance, or if you're just watching the stream because you think it's interesting, hopefully this will show you some pretty cool maneuvering. So the first thing I'm going to go do is I'm going to go spend all of this massive amount of science that we collected for ourselves. So, 419 science. Each one of these is going to cost 90. So we're going to be able to get ourselves 4 of them? Is that right? 4 times 9, 36? Yeah, so we're going to be able to pick up 4 of these. Now, I want to focus on the ones that are going to make it easier to get ourselves to the moon. So landing. Landing gives us some bigger landing structs, bigger heat shield. So that's an obvious one to get. Advanced flight control gives us the lander can. So that's definitely something that you want to pick up if you want to build decent landers. Although you'll see the first one that we build is actually going to be fairly simple, but it's all very useful. Miniaturization. It's useful to get the docking port. But here's a really important one. I want to get electric so that I can pick up the first set of solar panels, and some batteries and some lights. And now we have 149 science left, so we can pick up 1 more of these. Now we got to look at what we want. So heavy rocketry gives us some bigger engines, but to be honest with you, we don't really need those yet. Propulsion systems gives us some smaller engines for doing very small things. So if we get into space probes, this stuff will all be very useful, but that's not our focus right now, so we can ignore that one. Fuel systems gives us bigger fuel tanks. It gives us some of the 2.5 meter fuel tanks, which we don't really have the engines for yet, but might be useful in building a lander, and it gives us a fuel duct, so this is definitely a good one. Advanced construction gives us some aerodynamic ports, it gives us a band adapter, some different detachment manifolds. This is definitely something that we're going to want to look at fairly soon, but not yet. Aerodynamics is more spaceplane parts. Now, if we get into later parts and I start doing series that involve spaceplanes, we'll definitely go through all this. But right now, this isn't a focus for us. So I think that fuel systems is going to be what we want. And I think as a bit of a bonus this time, I'll go through and teach you how to do asparagus staging, which is a very, very efficient way to launch rockets in this game. And the key to that is going to be this external fuel duct. So why don't we pick that up? So we have 59 science. We can't unlock anything else, but that's still, I mean, we're going to pick up a ton heading up to the moon. So let's go ahead and close that out. So now let's look at missions. So here's what's active. There are orbital surveys of the moon. 2 of them we have not done. There's contracts to test both of these. Unfortunately, we haven't landed in the water, so that we haven't been able to do this one. And this one, I haven't been able to get the velocity right for this one yet. So we'll probably do a special mission right for that, but I think, yeah, we're going to get our landing missions right now, and that's what I want to do first. So plant a flag on the moon. So it means you have to land, you have to plant a flag on the surface. This is all super important stuff, so we're definitely going to pick this one. Now, we have room for some more active contracts, so let's take a look at what we've got. Ferry VIP, orbit around Kerbal, not very interesting, we've done it. Here are 2 VIPs who would like to orbit the moon. Now, we might be able to get away with this one. I'm trying to think of how we're going to do it. So we don't have any docking ports yet, and without docking ports, it's difficult to detach a lander and send it down to the surface of the moon and bring it back up. So if we did this, we have to take the VIPs with us to the surface. Now that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, and they are going to pay a pretty penny for the privilege. So maybe I'll create a craft that's based around the hitchhiker storage container, which holds enough passengers that will allow us to pull this off. Space data around Kerbal. It's not interesting. That was uninteresting. Orbital surveys of the moon. We did this the last one. This is very profitable, but I'm not going to pick that up just because. Now, rescue Milgy Kerbal from orbit of the moon. You can see this is going to give us a ton of funds and a lot of reputation. And I think, well, both of these are going to give us things. Stranded in orbit of the moon. So I'm wondering if we build a rocket with enough delta V, we should be able to do both of these. So I'm going to pick these two up. And instead of taking the tourists with us, we'll have 2 extra spaces to go and rescue these astronauts. And I can land, and then I can show you a little bit of orbital maneuvering. And if we don't make it in one flight, we'll do a second one and pick up the rest. But these are good contracts. So let's go ahead and grab those two. All right, so first things first, as usual, we're going to have to build ourselves a rocket. Now, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade the landing pad to get unlimited vessel size. And I can't upgrade to unlimited parts, but 255 is going to be fine for now. But this got rid of the weight limit for us. This got rid of the weight limit, and because of that, we're not going to have as that's not what I want to do. We're not going to have as much problem getting ourselves to the moon. Now we have to pick up 2 passengers, and we have to send up our own person. Now, the hitchhiker storage container is really the key to all this because it allows you to hold 4 Kerbals. So I'm going to basically take one of these and I'm going to put a pod on top of it that's going to control everything. Now, I have a choice here. I really only need to take 4. I really only need 4 seats on this rocket. 1 for a pilot, 1 for a scientist, and then 1 for each of the people that we're going to go and rescue. And in fact, I don't even really need 1 for the pilot if I did this. So we could do this robotically, but I think I'm going to bring a pilot. I think that's going to be more interesting. So I need a pilot, I want a scientist so I can reset experiments, then I need 2 spots, so that's 4 spots on the rocket. The hitchhiker storage container does not have everything that's required to kind of command a pod, so you're kind of stuck having to put at least 1 of these pods on the front. So once you do that, you have to consider you need 3 more Kerbals, and how do you want to go about getting it? So you could do it this way. This passenger cabin holds 2 people, and I could do 2 pods in a passenger cabin. How tall is this thing? How hard is that going to make it to maneuver? That's probably okay. And how much does it weigh? It weighs 1 ton, and this weighs 2.5. So I think we're going to take the hitchhiker storage container, even though it's not the most efficient. Wow, that's not what I want to do. So we'll start here, and we'll take the hitchhiker storage container, even though it's not the most efficient way to do this, because I don't necessarily need all that passenger space, but I think from a weight perspective, we're going to be better off. And this is going to give us a nice, stable platform to build a lander out of. So we're going to need landing struts. I like 4 landing struts. That's, for me personally, that's pretty good. You can see what they look like deployed. That gives you a nice, stable platform. I actually didn't do this well from a symmetry perspective. And then the other thing is, in an ideal world, we would have a ladder, but it's okay. You can RCS back into the craft, so that's not a big deal. So the next thing, so now we're allowed to control this thing. I want to put solar panels on this. To power this thing. I want to put them in a lot of different orientations, because they don't weigh very much. They're not very expensive, and this will make sure that no matter which way we're oriented, we should have lots of battery power. So on the top of this thing, We're going to put parachutes. Not 4 parachutes. I'm going to put 3 parachutes. So that should give us more than enough stopping power. Now we're going to need a heat shield. Now, we got the bigger heat shield, which is great, because that's going to save us when we re-enter. Now, we definitely want science experiments, so there's lots of places to stick these. And I'm just going to put 2 of each of these on here. I actually am going to go so far as to extend this to put a science junior. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. So this is going to be our lander. So it weighs, 5 tons. And I want to bring you back to our delta V chart here. Let me pull this up. So here's our delta V chart again. We're going to go back down and look at the moon. So, as we said, 3,400 to orbit, 860 to get to an encounter, 310 to pull it into orbit, 580, and then we know from last time we probably need about 500 to get back. So that means that we need 3,400 to lift the whole thing, and then we need 580, so 1,080 plus, so let's call it 1,100, 1,400, plus another 9 is 2,300. So we need 2,300 delta V plus 3,400 is 5,700 delta V. I'm going to aim for about 6,000 in order to be able to pull this off. So I'm going to put a big decoupler here. I'm going to put that. Actually, that's not going to work at all, is it? Sorry. I need to put the thrust that's going to get us on and off the moon first off. And this can blast off the sides when we're done with it, but I think we're probably going to need tanks about that large. Now, I'm going to switch my Kerbal engineer to the moon, and we're going to look at, I guess we're going to use these. Don't have anything smaller. So we have a huge thrust to weight. 1,500 delta V is more than enough to get us down and back up. Oh, sorry, I should have taken this window out of here. Whoops. 1,500 delta V is more than enough to get us down and back up from the moon. So we can treat these as our landing stage, drop everything off, and then we need about 5,000 delta V, say. 5,000? Yeah, 5,000 delta V on top of this to make it work. So I'm going to switch this back to Kerbal, and I'm going to switch it to atmospheric, which is going to be incredibly pessimistic, and then I'm going to try to get 5,000 on top of that 3,500. So, we are going to need we do have large fuel tanks. We do have large fuel tanks. So I don't need any of that. I just don't have the large engines. Okay, so we're going to put the biggest fuel tank that we have, and that is going to serve as our what's the thrust to weight on this? That's kind of messy. Well, we don't have the best engines in the world, but I think we're going to have to use these. Okay, so we're gonna use that as our second stage. And I want to have enough boost to launch that whole thing into orbit. Actually, this will be our trans-moon stage, our Munar transfer stage. This will be our landing stage at the top. And then we need to build a booster stage to actually get this into orbit. So let's say we need another 3,400 on top of that. So I have just realized a problem. No, this will be alright. So we're actually going to use this stage to conduct our rescue operation as well, which is just fine. So I want to put giant fuel tank. Yeah, this is going to be great. Okay, so we're going to do the rest of this using asparagus staging. And that works like that. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to put this giant fuel tank in the middle, and I am going to put an engine, a big engine, on top, on the bottom of it. It's a 0.39. Okay, so that's going to be our middle, our last stage to deploy. Now, how asparagus staging works is the idea is that you don't want to be carrying fuel tanks or engines after they're not useful anymore. So what you're going to do is I'm going to strap a ring of boosters around this, and they're going to feed their fuel into this center tank so that when all of the external stages have blown off, this tank right here will still be full. And what that's going to mean is that we take the least amount of weight necessary as we continue to go up. Now, in real life, rockets don't use this, but it's because we don't have the pumps to make this possible. But this is KSP; it's not 100% realistic. So we can use this strategy quite effectively to build ourselves some rockets. I think I'm going to put those there because I'm worried about clearance. So I'm going to put us a whole bunch of rocket tanks like this. And each one of these is going to have a fuel line. And I want you to notice the arrow on the fuel line. That always shows which direction the fuel is going. So the fuel is going to get taken out of these and put into the middle tank. I'm going to put swivels on this. Actually, they don't need to be swivels because that internal stage, these engines that we're using on the internal stage, the thuds, have really excellent swiveling. So they're what are going to provide our control. And these extra ones on the outside are just going to provide our boost. So do we have this staged correctly? And then let's look at our math. So I want to bring these middle engines down and have them ignite at the same time as all the other engines. Now that's going to give us a massive thrust of weight. But it's also going to allow this whole thing to work properly. So all of the engines are going to light at once. I think maybe we'll thrust limit. Well, I think I'm going to have to put one more stage on. Then we can play with the thrust limiting. So we're looking good. We're looking good. So this is a fairly basic asparagus stage thing. In fact, this is almost like I just strapped them onto the outside. So what you can do now, though, is that you can add another stage on the outside of these ones. So I'll put this there. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to copy one of these. I'm going to put this there. Then I'm going to strap these to the outside of this rocket. Now, I'm going to move these, and these are going to put their fuel into here. And now what's going to happen is, first you're going to burn these tanks, and when these get jettisoned, these will still be full. Then you're going to burn these tanks, and when these get jettisoned, the middle tank will still be full. Now I have to get all this set up properly. That's all those blowing. Those are the next stage. That's that. Okay, so you'll see that we have a colossal amount of delta V here. Should be... Is it actually going to be enough? So where's 3400? It's somewhere stage 4. Huh. So interestingly, this is not going to be enough, I don't think. Well, if at first you don't succeed, you can always strap solids. So let's put some thumpers on the outside of this. This thing looks insane. And I'm going to have to put a bunch of struts in to make this work. But and I need to thrust limit these down. So stage 9 is going to burn for 42 seconds. Then we're going to blast those off, and we're going to burn for 14 seconds. So I want to thrust limit these down to 25%. I want to thrust limit these down. And this is just to keep the... There we go. So now we got tons of delta V. Tons and tons and tons of delta V. We'll strut this all up, and hopefully this thing is not going to explode. I'm purposely not using rocket designs that I have used in the past because I think it's more interesting to see me kind of struggle with the design of these rockets as I go. I don't know if this thing is going to be stable. I don't know if it's going to blow apart on the launch pad. And hopefully people can forgive me for reverting a few of these if they turn out to be utter disasters. So we got everything strutted there. Now I want to strut the central core, basically to everything. So strut to that, strut to that, and strut to that. So that one, and the inner, and that one, and that one. Okay, so this thing is going to rocket off the launch pad at a quite epic rate. Then we got those 3, then that, then those 2. Alright, I think we have enough delta V. I think we can pull this off. Remember, we're doing all of this because we're trying to get all 3 of these contracts at once. Maybe if we have some time at the end of the stream, I'll quickly build a very simple rocket that could land on the moon out of parts. You know, I'm using suboptimal parts here. I'm doing all sorts of complicated things to try to be able to pull off all 3 of these missions in one go. It's actually possible to land on the moon with a much simpler rocket than this. But, I don't know. This thing looks hilarious and it looks fun. And I'm actually going to call it the Moon Sploder because I think exploding is... a likely outcome of all of this. But let us see. Let us see what happens. Okay, let's talk crew. Jebediah Kerman's going to pilot this. Bob Kerman, our loyal scientist, will be there. We got landing pads. We have a heat shield. We can blast these off when we get back to onto a course that's going to take us into the atmosphere. The parachutes are in a stage by themselves. We have solar panels. Our staging looks reasonable. I do not think that there is anything that we have forgotten, except I am going to add an antenna because crew reports can simply be transported back. I'm going to put one on each of these. Okay, so there you have it, the Moon Sploder. Let's see if it blows up on the launch pad or not. Alright, SAS on, full throttle. Bob and Jebediah sitting on the launch pad ready to go. 3, 2, 1, and blast off. Well, much to my shock, this rocket did not simply explode. And actually, with those high swivel engines in the middle, it's proving remarkably stable. A little bit of a roll, but nothing we can't handle. So you can see from the staging, the solids are going to burn out first. And all the engines are on right now, keep that in mind. And that's the real trick to this. The solids are going to burn out first. When they do, I'm going to get rid of them. Oh, and they're going to take a lot of engines with them. Okay, well. Well, I lost half my delta V. I'm pretty sure this will still make it to orbit. I also forgot a Kerbal engineer part. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go back to vehicle assembly. Now, this is a problem that you'll often find, where parts of your rocket dropping off take other parts of your rocket with them. So, to try to help that, I'm actually going to drop the solids way down on these rockets. Basically into the point where they're just barely on. And then I'm going to do the same with these liquid fueled boosters. Just to where they're still on the rocket. Now hopefully this will mean that everything kind of doesn't destroy part of the rocket when you pop it off. The other thing I forgot is to put a Kerbal engineer part on. Not super critical, but I like to be able to see my delta V stats so that in a situation like that one, I knew whether I could make the moon or not. All right, so let's try the refined moon sploder. All right, same deal. SAS on, full throttle. Away we go. That strut there is hilarious, but what are you doing? Did not notice that. So I'm going to start rolling over. This time it's much more spinny. It's not really that big of a deal as long as it doesn't wobble. Okay. First phase gone. Oh, another phase gone. And you'll notice these tanks are still largely full, and that is because of the asparagus staging. So, this is good. This is very flyable now. I'm going to lay it over on its side. We're still going to get the nice equatorial orbit that we want. Our apparatus is rising nicely, and we got lots of fuel left. Okay, nothing important to do up there. Now these engines are not the most efficient engines in terms of specific impulse, but they have great maneuverability, and that's why I'm being able to keep this rocket so nice and stable. So we're moving at a pretty good clip, 32,000 meters. Actually start going a little more horizontal. Now, I'm not liking that. I'm worried that I blew my delta V calculations entirely. Let's see, we have 1800 left in this stage. Take this up to about 80,000 meters apoapsis height, and I'll kill the engines and start drifting up there. Alright, so we're going to have an apoapsis about 80. I'm going to add a maneuver there to take us to a circular orbit. Periapsis 80, apoapsis 81. That's pretty great. It's going to be a 36-second burn. Just going to use less than half the fuel I have left, so... Oh man. I don't think these rescue missions are going to be in the cards. I'm actually hoping that we're not going to create another rescue mission by running out of fuel. Alright, so let's time warp ourselves a little bit here. We'll start this at about 18 seconds. Maybe a little, maybe 19. That way I can slow down a little bit at the end of the burn and try to be more precise with it. Alright, so you've seen me do this several times in the previous episodes. Nothing new here. I'm going to power up, get us into a nice stable orbit, and then we're going to go for the moon. Alright, so realistically, apoapsis 82, periapsis 80. I am very happy with that. Now let's go plan our lunar transfer. So we're going to put 850-ish delta V. There we are. So there, that's a collision course with the moon. Alright, that's going to be a nice close approach to the moon. I'm pleased with that. We need to burn for 1 minute. Basically, everything we got left in this stage. Alright, time accelerate. And I'm just going to burn until this stage is done. Well, no I'm not, because that extra delta V actually would be quite a lot. So we want to burn, 27 seconds before the node. 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27. Let's just keep lined up with our maneuver node indicator on the nav ball there. And we'll watch as our apoapsis gets pushed out. Alright, there we have it. You know, it's hard to execute these perfectly, so we're not going to get as close as we wanted to, but we can fix that with a little mid-course correction. So I'm going to go ahead and warp there. And I'm going to go ahead and point retrograde? No. Prograde. Or I can actually have the SAS help me with this. You'll notice this time, we're not going to need to be as worried about electric charge because our solar panels are going to help us out. Now, I could use a maneuver node to do this, but the delta V involved here is so tiny that I'm actually just going to watch the periapsis as I throttle up just with one tick. And see, that's how little throttle it takes to really... Alright, there we go. We can go ahead and warp to the sphere of influence margin. We can open my science alarm clock. Time warp a little bit and see what our orbit's going to look like after we switch to the moon's sphere of influence. There, this is great. So we're falling towards the moon. We're going to end up with a nice low periapsis. Now, at this point, I kind of have to make a choice. I have 1500 delta V. I think I can basically go for the rescue or go for the landing. Well, I promised you a moon landing, and by God, I'm going to give it to you. So, I'm going to go to the periapsis. I'm going to add a maneuver. It's going to be to slow myself down. And I'm just going to go direct. Not even going to bother orbiting. Slow myself down, and I'm going to land. That's not what I meant to do. So, we're just going to bring it in. That's going to land me somewhere around here, give or take. Let's execute the maneuver, and then we'll talk about landing. Okay, so 288 delta V, that's more than I have left in this stage, but I'm going to burn off that 130 for sure. Then I'm going to switch to my final stage, and I will, well, don't really have time to take that EVA report, unfortunately, because I have burning to do. Okay, so I'm going to start early, because I know that my next stage is not necessarily going to have the thrust away to this one. So, that's gone. Engines ignite. Alright, so I'm going to grab my EVA report. Take that, reboard. Now I'm going to put my landing gear down. And I'm purposely landing on the light side of the moon. Okay, so I'm on a collision course. Um, it's telling me right now in 6 minutes I'm going to smash into the Midlands. If you didn't have Kerbal Engineer, you would see that, uh-oh, my orbit terminates there. So the simplest way to do a landing is just to stop, to take your horizontal speed down to 0, and then take your horizontal speed down to 0, and then just fall straight down. That's very inefficient. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to burn off 530 meters per second. And we can see from our delta V that that's going to take about, I don't know, call it 45, maybe even 50 seconds. No, okay, call it about 30 seconds to burn that off. So we have 5 minutes to impact. I'm going to want to give myself a bit of a safety margin, so I'm going to wait until about 1 minute to impact, and then I'm going to burn off by burning straight retrograde relative to the surface. And SAS will help you do this, which is kind of cool. I'm going to burn straight retrograde with respect to the surface, burn off all this horizontal speed. You'll see I'll probably gain some vertical speed, and then we are going to end up landing on the moon. So away we go. Time accelerate us here. 4 minutes. Now, if you don't have Kerbal Engineer, you can judge this based on a number of things. You can look at your altitude. But I do have Kerbal Engineer, which I think should have been a stock part of the game from the get-go. Because, you know, real astronauts have computers. I'm going to rotate myself. It's not really going to matter, but I think it looks cooler with the spacecraft oriented like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and start my burn in about another minute. Pretty cool craters and stuff. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is a good plane. You can see that retrograde right now is almost straight horizontal. I'm burning off almost purely horizontal velocity. I'm actually imparting some vertical velocity, but not very much. See, my speed is dropping quite rapidly. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, I know I am falling now, and I said that wasn't efficient, but it wouldn't have been efficient to fall from way up high. But for this last little bit, it's perfectly fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to watch my vertical speed. 40 meters per second, that is far too fast. But I'm going to wait until I get closer to the ground, and then I'm going to burn that off pretty much all at once. And I want to keep it at around 10. You can use, like, you know, a small amount of thrust. My horizontal speed now is in the millimeters per second. My vertical speed is coming down nicely. This is it. I can throttle up a little bit, slow myself down. But as soon as I get it, I'm going to want to cut my engines. And there we are. I am on the moon. So, time to take some science. Atmospheric pressure scan, that's for sure. Crew report, absolutely. EVA report. I'm going to take my EVA report. I'm going to plant my flag, which is going to satisfy my contracts. And I'm going to call it N Cancer's first moon landing. Now, the question is, I can't climb onto my rocket, and this is kind of a cool thing. These little suits, as I showed you before, have RCS. So I can actually just jet myself back up here. Grab. Climb. Actually, it's a scientist who got out. So I'm going to grab, and I'm actually going to get back inside. So now Bob's back in. I'm going to take my material study. Yep, I'm going to observe my mystery goo. And I'm going to take a temperature scan. Now there is a ton of science that we've just gotten. Now I could take my scientist out and clear all of these experiments. I kind of know that well, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because I want to be able to collect something on Kerbal. I want to be able to collect something on Kerbal in the event that we land the biome we haven't been in. So I'm going to collect the data, restore that experiment. I'm going to collect the data. We're going to restore that experiment. Take the data. No, it had to be the other barometer, didn't it? Crew report. Okay, I thought that would allow me to take that data, but oh, come on. Go over there. Take the data. So I'm going to go store all of these things back inside the hitchhiker storage container. Just waddle over here. Grab hold of that. Board my spaceship. All of this data is going to be stored. All those experiments are ready to rock again. And I'm on the surface. So there it is, moon landing. Now, none of this is really going to matter if we can't make it back to Kerbal, but we should have more than enough delta V to pull that off. So, I'm on the moon. I'm going to want to get myself into a retrograde orbit this time. So I'm going to head for 270. Retrograde orbit just makes it easier to get back to Kerbal. I don't have to be so careful taking off from the moon. You notice my apoapsis will blast right up. I only need to take it to 10 or 15,000. Then I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to go up and circularize, and then we're going to try to get home. So, apoapsis, add maneuver. And we can actually, well, I'm going to take it just to the point where we're in a circular orbit, and then we can talk about this orbital rendezvous business that we're not going to be able to do. So, how does... Oops, don't want to do that. So that's going to throw us into an orbit of Kerbal. Oh my god, and it's going to take more delta V than we have. This is going to be trouble. Okay, now I got to start moving a little quicker here. Because if I don't, I'm going to be in a bit of trouble. Well, I'm just going to go ahead, point prograde, and start burning. I'm actually a little worried that I may have fouled this up. And I forgot how much fuel was required to get us off the moon. Yep, I am getting very worried. Yep, we have run out of fuel. In fact, we have run out of fuel in the worst way possible. We are going to crash and die. This mission is over. We are going to smash into the moon at 500 meters per second. Well, space travel is a dangerous game. And Bob and Jebediah, you are going to be casualties of it. So, I have done this many, many times. I do not know what to tell you, except prepare to watch one hell of a crash. I thought I was at least going to make it into an orbit and we could rescue these astronauts, but that was not to be. Instead, we are going to be a smoking crater. Because it's 600 meters per second. This is completely over. Well, it's been nice knowing you two. All that science data lost. Well, I think we just tried to do too much. And I was off on my fuel calculations. And that's what happens. That's what happens. So, I did promise I would show you how to build a much easier moon lander. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because I'm going to get that science. So, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to drop a fuel tank. Right, so super easy stuff, actually. Just a couple simple things. One is that we need heat shield. We need heat shield. We need a parachute. You know, completely bare bones stuff. Then we need a decoupler. We need an engine. Set our body to the moon. We need a engine. You can see that's more than you actually need to get up and down, but you do need to get home, so we'll leave it. Now I'm going to put some landing legs on this. So the only other thing I'm going to allow us here is a Science Junior. Science Junior, heat shield, landing legs. Alright, so this is what we're going to land on the moon. This is what we're going to bring home, right? Super simple stuff. Science experiments. Mr. Goo. That's it. Okay? 2,000 delta V, tons of thrust to weight. This thing is going to be a beauty to fly on the moon. So back to Kerbal. We're going to completely discount all this delta V. If I put a swivel, actually, I'll put this. That's going to give me another, 1,700 delta V, which is going to be what we use to get to the moon. I actually think I'm going to make this a 3. I'm going to make that a 3 engines with some struts. Fire at the same time. Then below that, we're going to put 3 decouplers. And 3 swivels. Actually, I want these to be mirrored, so 1.61, great. On the outside of this, we're going to strap a bunch of solids. So we're going to burn 6 solids. That's going to get us, as you can see, we've got more than enough to get us to orbit. Strut everything together. I'm going to put some fins on this. We are going to send Valentina to the moon. We're going to need some wings, though. Otherwise, this is going to be very difficult to control. Yeah. Well, the last one certainly lived up to the name Moonsploder, because that was the end of that rocket. Now, I lost 2 very capable astronauts, but luckily they respawn. And we're going to make this work. If you play this game, you're going to screw it up time and time and time again. And it's not so much how you screw up, it's how you recover that's really going to matter. So, think we're in a good spot. I think this should work. I want the Kerbal engineer part. That is important. And let's get going. All right, Valentina. You are going to succeed where your co-workers could not. So, you've seen this many times before. Same basic orbital maneuvering. Or I guess maneuvering to orbit. We're going to get up there. I'm going to blast the solids off. Show off a bit of a different rocket design for you. Oh, I screwed that up. I was going to say this will show off a bit of a different rocket design than the one I used previously. What happened there is I tilted over too fast, and that caused the rocket to go into an uncontrolled tumble. But I think I've got enough extra fuel to recover from that one, although I will admit that that is what I said last time, and then I ran out of fuel and smashed into the moon. So, here's hoping that this time I'm actually right. So the hope is that we're going to get out of the atmosphere with this stage, or at least so close to it that I can use those 3 very vacuum efficient engines to do most of the rest of the maneuvering. It looks like that's going to be the case. So APWAPS is 76, 77, 78, 79, 80,000. Maneuver node, APWAPS. I'm doing this a little quicker and without as much explanation as I did last time because I want you to see me actually survive a trip to and from the moon. So that'll give me apoapsis of 81, periapsis of 78. That would be perfect if I could achieve that. It's going to be a burn of 1 minute and 43 seconds, so I'd better start now. Now these engines, the Terriers, and the larger version of the Poodle, are great engines. They're very efficient in vacuum. They're the ideal engine for orbital maneuvering and transferring to moons. They don't have a ton of punch to them, but this spacecraft is fairly light. Most of its weight's in fuel, because I am not running out this time. Once we get the ability to dock, I'll show you my favorite way to mine science off the moon, which is going to be to take a science lab, park it in orbit, and then have a lander that docks, lands, collects science, goes back up to the lab, refuels, lands, picks up science, goes back up to the lab. While the science lab sits there, multiplying the amount of science that you get from each given experiment. And we'll cover that later. And you'll see how we can basically strip mine the moons for their precious, precious science. Alright, 7586. Not perfect, but definitely good enough for what we're trying to do. Let's see. What does my... It's going to be like a drive-by of the moon. Alright. It's going to get us in there. Another burn that I need to start basically now. You can see, as I mentioned, oh, I didn't put any solar panels on this one, but it's not really going to matter. If you have a computerized probe, though, forgetting to put solar panels, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. Get rid of the node. I'm going to warp to about here. Make a small mid-course correction just to get everything good. Now, you'll notice that this is actually a free return, meaning that if I were to just do this, we would scoot around the moon and end up back in Kerbin's atmosphere without having to expend any other delta V. But we have tons of it, so let's go ahead and fine-tune our lunar approach. Or Munar approach, I should say. So, we'll bring the periapsis down. Yeah, it's throwing away our great trajectory, but it's fine. I was going to stop on the moon anyways. Okay, it's going to be nice and close to the moon. Go ahead and warp to the SOI margin. That's why being sphere of influence. Don't know if I mentioned that in the recording. Right now we are in Kerbin's sphere of influence. We will cross over at this point to be in the moon's sphere of influence. And you'll see that's when our orbital change, just like that. Now at the periapsis, I want to add a maneuver to circularize. I'm going to slow down. That's going to use 200 delta V. So I'm going to have delta V to spare. And I actually want to put these engines on a collision course so we don't leave junk in order over to the moon. So I may actually be able to go and get one of these people. 780. I don't know. How much delta V would it take, really? So I'm going to go see if I can get a decent rendezvous with one of these capsules. It looks like I actually can. How close? 32.8 kilometers? 30.5? How close can we get? Intersect 133.6 kilometers. It's going to cost me 190 delta V. That is very interesting. So what I've just done here is I've instead of slowing down to go into a very tight circular orbit, I'm slowing down so that my apoapsis basically matches up with one of the two people that I'm going to rescue. And this is going to get me within 30 kilometers of them. And it actually, I should just be able to raise or change the axis of my orbit a little bit and pick them up fairly easily. So I'm going to go ahead and try this because I think I have enough delta V in this translunar stage to make this work. And hopefully I'm not going to pull a last time. But you get to see some interesting stuff here. So whenever your orbit gets, so what I did is I set mileage's wreckage here as a target, right? So I clicked on it and I hit set as target. When you do this, it's going to give you extra information about how your two orbits work relative to each other. It gives you the ascending and the descending node, which allow you to align your orbits, and then it's going to give you intersect position. So this is telling me that I'm going to intersect one, and the distance is going to be 33.6 kilometers, and it'll happen 2 hours from now. So I'm going to line myself up and go down to this maneuver node. It's going to be a 10-second burn. So I can put SAS back on. Time accelerate. Now I'm going to want to do this fairly precisely, so I'm going to slow the burn rate right down here. So now I'm looking at 29 kilometers. So I'm going to go and put a maneuver at the descending node to align our orbits. Try not to overdo it. Okay, so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to bring our relative velocities down. So I'm going to warp to about here. What the heck just happened? I blew up. I crashed into the moon. Well, this was unexpected. This was unexpected. I am sorry. I did not mean for any of this to happen. This has been a bad day for me. I have killed a lot of astronauts and crashed a lot of ships. And I think I may simply call it a stream. Next time, we are going to try to do this successfully. Um, I'm going to do some massaging while the stream is off to respawn the astronauts. Uh, I will be back um, next time on N Cancer Streams KSP Career Mode. So I will see everyone later. Thanks again for watching.